Every house, every king, and every battle has its own truth. But there are stories older than crowns, darker than the night, and more dangerous than any blade. They were never written in books. They were whispered to fire, to the trees, and to the dead gods. And today, we dare to uncover one of them. The world was younger then. The freehold of Valyria had not yet shattered, and its dragon lords ruled with fire and song. Across the summer sea, their shadows stretched long, so long they touched even the smallest islands, and men whispered of them as gods. But gods they were not. They bled as men did, and one of them, perhaps the most feared among them, was dying. He was called the Pale Viper, though none knew his true name. Some said he had been born in the alleys of Valyria, raised by sorcerers who had shaped his blood with dragon flame. Others claimed he was no man at all, but a revenant bound by spells of vengeance. Whatever the truth, he had earned his name through silence and swiftness. No one ever saw him strike. Those who did not live to tell it. But one night, in the silver streets of the freehold, the Viper's blade found a mark he should never have touched. A magister of House Coral, high in the Council of Blood. The man died gasping in his marble bath, and the assassin fled before dawn. That same night, the Viper felt the first sting of his curse. It began as a fever that would not cool. His hands trembled, his breath came shallow, and his reflection in the mirror of black glass seemed to wither before his eyes. By the next moon, his hair had turned white as snow, and every wound he dealt upon another man's flesh left a shadow upon his own. Desperate, he went to the healers of Valyria, but they turned him away. "The gods repay blood with blood," said one, "and you have drunk deep." Yet one whispered of a place far beyond the freehold's reach, a cluster of broken isles called the Stepstones, where exiles and pirates made their dens. There, it was said, a dragon rider once of Valyria had been banished for heresies against the blood of dragons. Some called her mad, others, a healer of impossible arts. And so the Pale Viper set sail, cloaked and silent, aboard a smuggler's galley bound for the narrow straits. The voyage was ill-starred from the first. The crew whispered that the assassin carried doom in his shadow. Storms hounded them from the east, and twice their sails caught flame in clear air. When a sailor vanished overboard without sound or splash, the captain begged the Viper to disembark. But the assassin only looked to the dark horizon and said, "The curse is not yours to bear." By the time they reached the Stepstones, the ship was half ruined, and most of the crew had deserted. The islands were a scatter of jagged rocks rising from a restless sea, each claimed by a different tyrant or thief. Smoke coiled from pirate fires on distant shores, and somewhere among those lawless men lived the dragon rider, Lady Vailora of Valerian blood, said to have turned from fire to water, from conquest to cure. The Pale Viper found her fortress on an isle no larger than a town square. Its towers were built from pale coral, and its gates stood unguarded. Within, the air smelled of salt and strange herbs. A woman waited by the hearth, her silver hair loose upon her shoulders, her eyes pale as the sea foam. "You should not have come," she said, as though she had been expecting him. "The curse upon you was forged by fire and bound by death. It cannot be cured." "Then I will unbind it," he answered. "Tell me how." Her smile was thin. "You think this is a wound that can be stitched shut? You are dying because you killed a man who had no life left to take. The magister you slew was already dead, his heart stilled by sorcery to cheat death itself. When you struck him down, his debt passed to you." The assassin's eyes narrowed. Then the debt must be repaid. Valora rose, her robes whispering like surf. Aye, but death does not yield easily. To lift your curse, you must return what was stolen, the breath of the dead man taken in blood. Somewhere in these islands lies the heartstone that binds him still. Find it, and perhaps your own heart will beat true again. And if I fail, then the curse will finish what it began. Each life you take will shorten yours until the last breath you steal is your own. That night, as the winds howled around the coral tower, the pale viper lay awake upon the stone floor, watching the shadows move. His fever had grown worse. The mark upon his hand had darkened to black. Yet his mind was clear as steel. He knew now what he must do. At dawn, he left the isle, armed with Valora's map and a promise of death. His path led toward Greyblood Cove, where the pirates of the Stepstones feasted on ruin and wreckage. Somewhere among them, she said, he would find the Heartstone, bound to a man who had forgotten his name and lived only to kill. The assassin smiled bitterly beneath his hood. A fitting place, he murmured, for a man like me to seek his cure. And so began his descent into the lawless isles, where fire-born curses met the steel of desperate men, and redemption came at the edge of a blade. The morning broke with a bitter wind from the east. It carried the scent of ash and salt, and the cries of gulls that circled hungrily over the restless sea. The pale viper stood at the bow of a stolen skiff, his cloak snapping behind him like the tattered wings of some dying beast. Ahead, the stepstones rose from the mist, dark shapes of rock and ruin, scattered like the bones of drowned gods. Valora's map lay in his hand, its parchment stiff with salt. Upon it, a dozen isles were inked in curling Valyrian script. But one mark drew his eye again and again. Greyblood Cove, where the Heartstone was said to lie hidden. The sea was treacherous in those waters, full of hidden reefs and half-sunken wrecks. Twice his boat scraped bottom. Once a great fin surfaced near enough for him to see the jagged edge of a tooth longer than his dagger. But he did not turn back. His fever burned hotter now, and each breath came with a taste of iron. The curse was eating him from within. By dusk, he reached the cove. It was no true harbor, only a wound torn into the cliffs by centuries of crashing waves. The air was thick with the reek of tar and blood. Ships rotted at anchor, their hulls crawling with barnacles. Shanties of driftwood clung to the cliffs like limpets. Fires burned low along the shore, and rough voices rose in drunken song. Pirates, sellswords, and exiles, men with no homes but the sea. He pulled his hood low and made his way among them. Few paid him heed. In a place like Greyblood, every man was a killer, and silence was safer than curiosity. Still, whispers followed him as he passed. That one walks too soft. His eyes burn too cold. At the far end of the cove stood a tavern built from the ribs of a ship. Its sign was a rusted anchor, and from within came the sound of dice and quarreling. The viper entered without a word. The room fell half silent. Smoke curled thick in the air, mingling with the stench of rum and sweat. A dozen hard men sat at the tables, reavers, smugglers, slavers. Behind the bar, a woman with hair like black rope filled a cup from a cracked jug. The assassin took a seat near the wall. "Rum," he said. The woman eyed him warily but obeyed. "You're new," she said as she poured. "Not many come here alone." "I'm looking for a man," he answered. "He carries a stone that bleeds red in the moonlight." A hush crept over the room. The woman's hand froze on the jug. "You speak of the Heart-Bearer," she whispered. "Best you stop that talk. Men who go seeking him don't return. The viper drank, his eyes never leaving hers. Then I'll return his due. He left before she could answer. Outside, night had fallen, and the sea burned black beneath the moon. He moved through the shadows, guided by the faint glimmer of firelight along the cliffs. It was there he found the Heartbearer's den, a cave mouth guarded by two men with axes, both half drunk and laughing. They never saw the blade. The assassin slipped between them like smoke, their blood steaming in the cold air. Inside, the cave widened into a hall of stone. At its center burned a low fire, and beside it sat a figure wrapped in furs, sharpening a sword upon his knee. His hair was the color of rust, his skin pale and scarred. "You've come far," the man said without looking up. "I smelled your death on the wind before you landed." The viper stepped closer. "You have something that belongs to me." The Heartbearer laughed softly, a sound like gravel. "So they all say. The stone chooses its bearer. It does not yield to thieves." He rose, and the firelight caught the thing at his throat, a pendant carved from black crystal, pulsing faintly with red light. The Heartstone. "I did not steal it," the viper said. "I came to end its curse." "Then end yourself, assassin. That is the only cure." The Heartbearer moved fast, faster than a man of his size had any right to move. But the viper was faster still. Steel rang on steel. Sparks leapt between them. The air filled with the hiss of blades and the thunder of boots striking stone. The Heartbearer's strength was monstrous. Each blow shook the cave. But the assassin fought like a shadow, slipping past each strike to draw thin lines of crimson upon his foe's flesh. At last, the Heartbearer stumbled. The viper's dagger flashed once, twice, and the red glow at the man's throat flared like a star. The pendant split, spilling a drop of light that fell smoking to the floor. The Heartbearer fell beside it, clutching his chest. "You fool," he gasped. "The stone was not mine to guard, it was hers." Before the assassin could speak, the man shuddered and lay still. The viper bent and picked up the shattered gem. Its light pulsed weakly, as if it were alive. When his fingers closed around it, pain lanced up his arm. Visions filled his mind. A silver-haired woman, her eyes filled with tears, standing before a burning temple. A circle of robed magisters chanting in Valyrian, and a name whispered like a curse. Valora. He dropped the stone, breath ragged. The cave around him seemed to twist and blur. The woman's words came back to him. "You must return what was stolen." But it was she who had stolen it. She had cursed him, not the magister he'd slain. Outside, thunder rolled over the sea. The viper turned toward the cave mouth, fury and revelation burning through his fever. The dragon rider had lied. She had sent him here not to cure him, but to kill him. The Heartstone was her doing, and the curse, her vengeance. He sheathed his dagger and stepped into the storm. Lightning split the sky, and in its brief white glare, he saw the path ahead, a trail of blood and betrayal leading back to the Coral Tower. The assassin's fate was written now, though he could not yet read the final line, and the wind, cold and relentless, whispered of death yet to come. The storm did not end for 3 days and 3 nights. The sea rose in black walls that broke upon the cliffs with the fury of gods denied worship. The pale viper's skiff was long lost, dashed against the rocks, but he did not wait for calm waters. He found passage aboard a trader's galley bound north, a vessel crewed by hard-eyed men who took coin without questions. He sat alone in the stern, his cloak heavy with salt, the broken Heartstone clenched in his fist. The shard still glowed faintly, pulsing like the beat of some dying heart. He felt its thrum in his blood, as if it were bound to him. And perhaps it was. Each hour the fever worsened. His reflection in the water grew ghastly, cheeks hollow, eyes burning like coals. Sometimes, when the ship creaked, he fancied he heard whispers rising from the sea beneath him, voices calling him by a name he no longer remembered. On the fourth dawn, the winds died. The sky cleared to a pale, cruel blue, and the island of Vylora came into sight, a crescent of white sand and coral towers gleaming in the sunlight. It looked peaceful, untouched by storm or sin, yet the assassin's heart was black with purpose. The crew would not land him. "That island is cursed," said their captain, a one-eyed man from Lys. "Those who walk its shore never walk away again." The viper pressed a dagger to the man's throat. "Then I'll be the first." He rowed himself ashore in a skiff, the waves lapping quietly against the hull. The air was thick with the smell of herbs and seaweed, and gulls circled overhead, crying like souls in torment. The beach was empty. Only the footprints of crabs marked the white sand. He made his way inland. The path wound through groves of coral and pale stone. The tower where he had met Vylora still stood, its doors open as before, its halls lit by a soft blue fire. Yet something had changed. The walls were lined with glass jars, each holding strange things: serpents floating in oil, hearts that beat though they were severed, eyes that followed him as he passed. The air thrummed with quiet power, and in the shadows he heard the faint hum of whispered Valyrian words. At the heart of the tower, he found her. Vylora sat upon a low stone dais, her silver hair unbound, her eyes closed in concentration. Around her burned a ring of blue flame. At her feet lay a great dragon's skull, half buried in the floor. "You returned," she said, her voice soft but steady. "You were meant to die in the cove." "I did not," the viper said. "The heart-bearer spoke your name with his last breath." Her eyes opened then, cold, pale, unyielding. He was loyal, but foolish. "You cursed me," he hissed, "not the Magister. You bound your vengeance to my blood." She rose slowly, her hands clasped before her. "You killed my husband," she said simply. "He was not the monster you believed him to be." "He was a Magister of coral," the assassin spat. "He trafficked in death and shadows." Vylora's face hardened. He sought to save Valyria from its own doom. He delved into death to learn how to preserve life. The council called it heresy, and you were sent to silence him. Her words struck him like blows. "You lie." "Do I?" she whispered. "The day you struck him down, the flames of the freehold burned brighter. His work was nearly finished, until you spilled his blood upon the tiles. I wove the curse not for vengeance, but balance. Each death you deal steals from your own life, so that you might feel the weight of the lives you take." The assassin's hand trembled. For the first time in years, doubt pierced the armor of his resolve. "I did not choose my targets," he said quietly. "No one ever does," she answered. "We are all weapons in another's hand." He took a step forward, the heartstone clutched in his palm. "Then end this. Take back what you bound." Vylora's gaze flicked to the shard, and for a moment, sorrow softened her eyes. "I cannot. The curse feeds on your life now. Only the blood that forged it may unmake it." He frowned. "Yours. I." For a heartbeat, neither moved. The sea wind moaned through the tower's broken windows. Then, with a sigh that was almost a prayer, Vylora drew a thin dagger from her sleeve. "You came for vengeance," she said. "Take it and free yourself. But know this, When I die, the bond that holds your curse may shatter, or it may consume you utterly. I do not know which." The pale viper felt the world tilt around him. The fever roared in his veins. He could strike. End it now. End her. End the curse. But as he looked upon her, he saw no malice there, only weariness. The same weariness he felt. He lowered his blade. "No. If blood forged it, blood may cleanse it, but not yours. Mine." Before she could speak, he plunged the dagger into his own palm. The heartstone flared in his grasp, light spilling from the cracks like molten fire. He cried out as pain seared through him, spreading from his arm to his heart. Vylora's eyes widened. "Fool, you cannot—" The tower shook. The air filled with light and sound. For an instant, he saw visions again. The burning of Valyria, dragons screaming in the sky, and a river of molten gold swallowing the freehold. Through it all, he heard a single voice, soft and mournful. "No cure comes without a price." When the light faded, the tower lay in ruins. The coral walls had cracked. The fires burned low. The assassin lay upon the floor, breathing shallowly. His hair had turned black once more, his fever gone. The curse was broken, or so it seemed. Vylora knelt beside him. "You fool," she whispered again, but there was something like wonder in her voice. He opened his eyes. "Is it done?" "For now," she said, "but the curse has only changed its face. You gave your life to free it from yourself. Now it sleeps within me." He tried to rise, but strength failed him. "Then I have doomed you." "No," she said gently. "You have given me a choice I did not have before." The sea winds rose once more, carrying the scent of salt and storm. "Rest now," she murmured. "Your part in this tale is ended. For the moment." His vision dimmed. The last thing he saw was her silhouette framed by the rising dawn, the light glinting off the broken heartstone that now hung at her throat. And as sleep took him, he thought he heard the beating of distant wings. The dragons, it seemed, had not forgotten them. When the pale viper awoke, the tower was gone. He lay upon a stretch of white sand beneath a sky streaked with crimson dawn. The air was heavy and still, and the ruins of Vylora's coral keep stood half swallowed by the sea, its stones blackened and steaming as though a dragon's fire had kissed them. He rose slowly, his limbs trembling. The fever was gone, yet a hollow ache lingered within his chest. Around him, the beach was littered with shards of coral and broken glass, remnants of her sorcery, and there, half buried in the sand, gleamed the shattered heartstone. Its red glow was gone, but when he touched it, he felt a faint pulse. Not magic. Life. He turned it over in his hand, and for a fleeting instant, he thought he saw her reflection in the smooth surface. Vylora, her silver hair drifting in unseen wind, her eyes closed as if in sleep. He whispered her name, but the sea only sighed in reply. By noon, he had built a small fire and found water among the ruins. His wounds had closed, leaving thin white scars where the fever once burned. Yet peace eluded him. The memory of her voice haunted him like the echo of a prayer unanswered. The curse has only changed its face. He should have left the island then, but something held him there, a sense that his tale was not yet done. And indeed, before the sun set, the sea gave up a sign. A ship appeared on the horizon, its sails black as obsidian, its prow carved in the likeness of a dragon's skull. It moved with unnatural speed, gliding through the waves without sound. The assassin's eyes narrowed. Such a ship could belong only to one people, the Valyrian freehold. By nightfall, it had anchored offshore. A small boat came ashore, bearing 4 figures in robes of gray and crimson. At their head walked a tall man with eyes of pale gold and hair as white as bone. His face was smooth as marble, untouched by age or mercy. He approached the pale viper with measured steps. "You are hard to find, Shadowborn," he said in High Valyrian, his voice cold and certain. "The Council of Blood decreed your death months ago." "I am not theirs to kill," the assassin replied. The man smiled faintly. "All who bear Valyrian blood are theirs to command. You are bound to them by birth, as I am. Who are you?" "I am Maelor Coral, son of the man you murdered, and brother to the woman whose curse you now carry." The assassin's hand went to his blade, but Maelor raised a single finger, and the air shimmered. Power thrummed through the sand. The fire beside them dimmed. "Peace, assassin," said Maelor. "If I had wished you dead, the sea would have swallowed you before you saw my sails. What do you want?" Maelor's gaze drifted toward the ruins of the Coral Tower. "My sister was a fool. She thought she could defy death, but her magic has unbalanced the order of things. The curse you share with her binds you both still. When she sleeps, you wake. When you breathe, she bleeds." The viper frowned. "She lives?" "Of a sort," said Maelor. "Her body lies beneath the sea, but her spirit burns yet, bound to the stone she forged. And now, that bond has poisoned the freehold itself. Fires erupt where no dragons dwell. Shadows walk the marble halls. The balance of life and death wavers." He took a step closer. "You will come with me to Valyria. Together, we will end what she began." The assassin studied him. There was truth in his words. He felt it in his blood, in the strange pull that had kept him upon the island. Yet he saw the gleam in Maelor's eyes, the hunger of a man who sought not balance, but dominion. "I owe the freehold nothing," he said. "Its chains forged me, and I broke them." "Then you condemn yourself," Maelor replied. "And her?" He turned away, gesturing to his men. "Bind him. We sail at dawn." Steel whispered from scabbards. The viper moved before the first man drew breath. His dagger caught the moonlight, and 3 fell before the 4th realized death was upon them. Maelor raised his hand, and a wall of flame burst from the sand, forcing the assassin back. "You cannot fight what is bound in blood," he said calmly. "Every drop you spill strengthens the curse." The assassin's breath came ragged. His veins burned anew, the old sickness stirring. He stumbled, the heartstone flaring faintly in his grasp. Maelor's smile deepened. "Do you see?" he said. "You are her other half. You cannot kill without killing yourself." The world swam. The assassin dropped to one knee, clutching his chest. His heartbeat faltered, then steadied, slower, weaker. And then, through the roar of the fire and the crash of waves, he heard another sound, the beating of wings. A shadow swept over the shore. Maelor looked up, eyes widening. "Impossible!" The sky tore open with light as a dragon descended, vast and silver, its scales glimmering like the sea. Its roar drowned the wind, and the sand leapt beneath its landing. Upon its back sat a figure cloaked in black, her hair shining like moonlight. Vaelora. She dismounted in silence, the dragon's eyes gleaming with something more than mortal intelligence. Her gaze fell upon Maelor first. "You would bind death again, brother?" she said, her voice carrying across the storm-tossed air. "Bind it, or be consumed by it," Maelor shouted. "You meddled with powers you could not master. Now all Valyria pays the price." She raised a hand, and the heartstone at her throat pulsed crimson. "I did what I must to save us. But you seek only to rule what should not be ruled." Maelor's face twisted. You were always too weak to bear the burden of our blood. Then let us see whose fire burns truer." The night exploded. Lightning danced between them as sorcery met sorcery. Waves crashed upon the shore, boiling where they touched the flames. The dragon roared, rearing against the sky. The pale viper stumbled back, caught between gods and monsters. Power seared the air, yet in its heart he saw her, Valora, radiant and terrible, fighting not for vengeance, but for release. He knew then that his fate was bound to hers indeed, and as the battle raged, he made his choice. He took the broken shard of the heartstone and pressed it to his chest. The pain returned, white-hot, blinding, but this time he did not resist. He called her name, and across the chaos she turned. Their eyes met, and in that instant, light swallowed them both. When it faded, the dragon was gone. The sea lay calm once more. Maelor knelt upon the shore, alone, his power spent, his gaze fixed on the place where his sister and her assassin had stood. There, half buried in the sand, lay a single stone, whole again, glowing softly with the red light of two hearts beating as one. Maelor reached for it, but the light flared brighter, and he drew back, his hand burned. The sea rose, and a voice like thunder whispered through the wind. "Leave it." He turned, but there was no one, only the whisper of wings fading into the distance and the quiet pulse of the sea. The age of heroes had not yet begun, but on that lonely shore, something greater than vengeance had been born. The sea swallowed the light, and all was still again. Dawn came slowly, gray and cold, washing the shore in mist. Maelor Coral remained upon the sand, the wind whipping through his pale hair. He stared long at the stone lying before him, whole again, crimson veins glowing faintly beneath its smooth surface. It pulsed with life, steady as a heartbeat. His sister's, perhaps, or the assassin's, or both. He reached for it once more, this time wrapping his hand in his cloak. The moment his fingers closed around the gem, pain lanced through his arm like liquid fire. He gritted his teeth and held on, lifting it from the sand. The glow dimmed at his touch, as though the stone itself recoiled. "So," he murmured, voice tight with awe and dread, "your souls are bound at last." Behind him, the waves hissed. The corpses of his fallen men were gone, carried out to sea or burned to ash. The air smelled of brine and smoke and something older, the scent of dragon fire long extinguished. Maelor turned toward the waiting ship, the black sails rippling faintly. His thoughts burned with purpose. If the curse of life and death had joined in one stone, the power it held could change the world. It could bind the doom of Valyria itself, and if he mastered it, he would become the greatest of the dragon lords. He crossed the beach, climbed aboard his skiff, and rowed toward the ship. None of the crew spoke when he returned. They saw the look in his eyes and knew their fates were no longer their own. "Set the prow for Valyria," he commanded. "We return to the freehold." The ship cut through the sea like a blade. Far beneath the waves, in a world of shadow and green light, the pale viper dreamed. He walked through halls of black glass, the walls rippling like water. Each step echoed as though he walked through the bones of the earth itself. Ahead of him stood a door wrought of silver and coral, glowing faintly. Beyond it, he heard a voice. "You gave your life to free me," it whispered. "And so we are one, you and I." He reached for the door, and it opened without sound. Valora stood within, her hair floating as if she stood beneath the sea. Her eyes met his, filled with calm. "We are bound, assassin," she said. "Neither wholly dead nor wholly living. Between worlds we linger, and the stone that holds us beats still upon the shore. He looked down at his hands. They were whole again, though light shimmered faintly beneath the skin. Then this is death? She smiled faintly. Not yet. There is work still to be done. Your brother lives, she said, and he will seek to use what remains of us. If he succeeds, Valyria will burn sooner than its time. The doom I sought to delay will come upon them all. He met her gaze. Then we must stop him. Her smile deepened, sad and knowing. You have no body, I have no strength, yet together perhaps we have enough. She reached for his hand, and when their fingers touched, the sea itself seemed to stir. The water above rippled and cracked with light. On the surface, Maelor's ship sailed beneath a blood-red moon. The Heartstone rested upon a pedestal in his cabin, surrounded by runes drawn in ash and oil. He had not slept in 2 days. His eyes were wild, his lips murmuring in ancient Valyrian as he pored over scrolls of his family's forbidden lore. At last, he set down his quill and stood before the stone. My father sought to master death, he said quietly. My sister sought to escape it, but I will command it. He reached into the folds of his robe and drew forth a vial of dark blood. The blood of dragons is the key. The fire of our line will wake what sleeps within. He poured it over the Heartstone. At first, nothing happened. Then the gem shuddered, glowing red. The light brightened until it filled the cabin, and the runes upon the walls flared to life. A voice echoed through the air, soft, melodic, and filled with fury. Maelor! He staggered back. The voice was unmistakable. Velora? He breathed. The light shifted, forming the faint outline of a woman. Her silver hair drifted like smoke, her eyes blazing with crimson fire. Beside her, another shape appeared, darker, leaner, the pale viper. You would dare bind us again? Velora's voice rang like steel upon stone. Maelor laughed, half in wonder, half in madness. Sister, you live. Together we can end what should never have been, she interrupted. Release the stone. I will not. The assassin's voice joined hers, low and deadly. You were warned, Maelor. Let the dead rest. But Maelor only spread his hands. You do not understand. I have seen the signs. The fire mountains tremble. The sky burns red. The doom approaches, and only I can stop it. With this power, I will bind the fires beneath Valyria. I will save us all. By enslaving the souls of the dead? The viper snarled. That is no salvation. Silence, Shade, Maelor roared. You are a murderer, a tool of men greater than yourself. You speak of honor now? The assassin's eyes flared. Perhaps not. But I know the price of blood better than you ever will. The ship rocked violently. The air grew heavy, the sea rising in sudden fury. Lightning flashed across the clouds. The crew shouted above deck, but Maelor paid them no heed. His focus was upon the Heartstone, now pulsing like a living heart. Velora's voice came again, quieter now. Brother, please, end this. He hesitated. For a heartbeat, sorrow touched his face. Then pride crushed it. I am Coral, he whispered. I end nothing. I create. He pressed both hands upon the stone. The world exploded. Flame erupted from the ship's heart, swallowing mast and sail. The sea boiled. The cries of men turned to silence as the water turned to steam. From the maelstrom rose a column of red light, reaching toward the heavens. At its core stood Maelor, eyes burning like twin suns, the Heartstone hovering above his palms. Its glow deepened, and within it, faint shadows moved. A man and a woman bound together, struggling against his will. Velora's scream echoed through the storm. You will doom us all. I will save us, Maelor cried. Valyria will endure. Then the sky split apart. From the east came a roar that shook the sea itself, the cry of dragons long thought dead. They rose from the horizon like living fire, wings blazing. The largest descended upon the ship, its eyes the same silver as Vaelora's. Maelor turned to face it, his mouth open in disbelief. No. The dragon struck. Flame engulfed the deck, and the world turned white. When the storm cleared, no trace of the ship remained. Only fragments of charred wood drifted upon the waves, and the faint glimmer of a red light sinking slowly into the depths. In the silence that followed, two hearts beat as one once more, drifting down into the darkness where the world's fire sleeps, and deep beneath the sea, where no light reached, the pale viper and Vaelora opened their eyes. The world burns, she said softly. Then we must rise before it does, he answered. They clasped hands, and the darkness trembled. Above them, in far Valyria, the mountains began to smoke. The doom was stirring, and the age of heroes had begun to wake. Deep beneath the black waters, where the drowned light of the sun no longer reached, the pale viper and Vaelora drifted within the heart of the abyss. Around them, the sea was silent and cold, yet within the silence came a strange, rhythmic sound, the distant thrum of the earth's own pulse. It was as though the world itself slept and dreamed in the darkness. The Heartstone floated between them, glowing faintly red, its light spreading in ripples that shimmered like breath upon glass. Each beat of that crimson glow echoed through their chests, and slowly the world began to take shape again. The assassin could feel his body forming anew, not flesh and bone as before, but something deeper, woven from fire and shadow. Vaelora, too, glowed with ethereal light, her silver hair spreading like threads of starlight through the water. When her eyes opened, they burned not with sorrow, but with resolve. The doom will come soon, she said, her voice carrying even in the depths. My brother's folly has stirred the fires of Valyria. The 14 flames will wake, and all that we once knew will perish. Then let it burn, the pale viper said quietly. The freehold was born of blood and cruelty. Let its ashes be their penance. Vaelora looked upon him, sorrow shadowing her calm. And what of the innocent? The children in the marble courts, the slaves who never tasted freedom? Would you let them burn as well? He said nothing for a moment. His memories were heavy, the screams of men dying by his blade, the silence that followed, the endless weight of his own hands. No, he said at last, but what power have we, bound to this stone? She reached toward the Heartstone, her fingers brushing its surface. Power greater than any Valyrian sorcerer dreamed. We are bound not by life or death, but both. If we choose, we can rise once more, not as mortals, but as the vengeance of all who were betrayed by fire. Her words stirred something in him, not vengeance, but purpose. Then tell me what must be done. Vaelora closed her eyes. To rise again, we must find the breath of the deep, the fire that sleeps beneath the roots of the sea. It is older than dragons, older than Valyria. It is what the first of our kind sought when they tamed flame and forged empires. If we claim it, we can command the fire and turn it against the doom itself. Where is it? Far below, she whispered, where the water ends and the fire begins. They descended together, following the faint glow that pulsed from the Heartstone. The sea grew hotter as they fell, the pressure immense, the light dimming until only their twin auras illuminated the darkness. Strange shapes passed them. Creatures without eyes, long as ships, their scales glimmering faintly in the red haze. Hours or days might have passed. Time had little meaning in that place. At last, they reached the bottom of the world, a vast plain of black stone cracked with glowing veins of molten gold. The earth's heart lay open before them, its fire slow and deep, breathing like a sleeping god. "This is the place," Valora said softly. The pale viper looked upon the molten glow. "And what must we do?" "Bind ourselves to it. Give the fire our will. Only then can we rise." He hesitated. "And if it consumes us?" Her eyes met his. "Then our souls will become the fire, and the world will remember us in its ruin." Without another word, she stepped forward and laid her hands upon the stone. Flames leapt upward, wrapping around her body in coils of white and gold. The assassin followed, his hand joining hers upon the molten rock. The fire burned, but it did not destroy. It filled. It seared through him, washing away all weakness, all doubt, all pain. The world vanished in light. When he opened his eyes again, he stood upon land. The sea stretched behind him, calm and black as obsidian. Before him lay the coast of Valyria, or what remained of it. The skies were dark with ash, and the air smelled of brimstone. Rivers of molten rock flowed through shattered valleys, and in the distance, mountains groaned. Valora stood beside him, her form solid once more, though her eyes still burned with that otherworldly light. "We are too late," she murmured. The pale viper followed her gaze. From the horizon rose the first of the great eruptions, a tower of flame and smoke climbing into the heavens. The ground trembled beneath their feet. "The 14 flames awaken," she said. "The doom has begun." They moved quickly, following the trembling paths toward the heart of the freehold. All around them, dragons screamed, their wings torn by fire and wind. Cities fell into the sea, their marble towers collapsing like sand. In the chaos, survivors fled in madness. Valyrian lords in silken robes ran side by side with slaves in chains. None knew mercy, none found escape. Valora raised her hand, and the heartstone rose from her breast, glowing fiercely. "We can stop this, but only for a time. The fire of the earth cannot be undone. We can turn it, shape it, but not destroy it." "How?" the assassin asked. "By becoming its vessel." She looked to him then, and in her eyes he saw both strength and sorrow. "If we bind the breath of the deep to ourselves, we may contain the fire long enough to seal the rift. But once done, we will never walk this world again." He smiled faintly. "We are dead already." She returned the smile. "Then let us make our deaths count." Together, they walked to the edge of the great rift, a wound in the earth that glowed with red fire. The roar of the flames was deafening, the heat unbearable. The assassin drew his dagger, its blade dull and blackened, and looked upon her one last time. "For every life I took," he said, "I offer this one freely. And for every life I failed to save," she whispered, "I offer mine." They clasped hands and stepped into the fire. The world erupted. The sea boiled, the sky split open, and Valyria screamed. Yet in the heart of the inferno, 2 lights shone brighter than all others, one red, one white, twining together until they became one. The flames raged, and then, slowly, stilled. The trembling ceased. The mountains quieted, and the sea began to cool. When the smoke cleared, Valyria was gone, a ruin of blackened stone and molten rivers, but the fire no longer spread. The doom had spent its fury. Upon a lonely cliff above the sea, a single stone remained, red as blood, veined with white. It pulsed faintly, a heartbeat echoing across the centuries. And though the land was dead, the whisper of two voices lingered in the wind. "We are the fire and the water," they said. "We are the end and the beginning." Thus ended the tale of the pale viper and the lady of the flame. But far across the narrow sea, in the lands of men yet unmade, a child was born beneath a red star. The old gods were silent, but the wind carried a promise that one day fire and blood would rise again. Centuries passed, and Valyria was no more. Its towers lay beneath the sea, its dragon lords turned to ash and memory. Yet the doom did not fade completely. It slept, buried deep beneath the smoking ruins, where the earth still burned. And far to the west, across the narrow sea, the world moved on. Kingdoms rose and fell. New lords took new thrones. In the north, where the cold never yielded, tales of the doom were little more than fireside stories. Legends of the great fall that had ended an age. But fire never truly dies. It was upon a night without moonlight that the first sign came. A red star burned in the eastern sky, brighter than any seen in living memory. The fishermen of the Stepstones called it the Dragon's Eye, and swore that the sea beneath it boiled. In the port of Lys, a priestess of the Lord of Light declared that two ancient souls had stirred from their slumber, bound by flame and blood. Few believed her, yet in the ruins of Valyria, where no sane man dared tread, the ground began to tremble again. In the far north, beneath a sky of endless gray, a boy named Joram Snow was born in the shadow of the wall. His mother was a washerwoman who died giving him life, and his father, if he had one, never came forward. He grew among the Night Fort's kitchens, serving bread and mutton to black-clad men who spoke of ghosts and monsters. From his earliest days, the boy was strange. The other children said he dreamed of fire even when the hearth was cold. Once, when a raven flew into the hall, Joram reached for it, and the bird burst into flame before his eyes. The brothers of the Night's Watch whispered that he was cursed. The Maester wrote it off as fancy, yet the Lord Commander sent him away all the same, to a village south of the wall, saying the boy's presence made the ravens restless. Years passed. The boy grew into a quiet young man, tall and lean, with dark hair and eyes that gleamed like embers when the firelight touched them. He worked the forges for a blacksmith, shaping blades that never dulled. When travelers asked where he had learned his craft, he said only, "In my dreams." And indeed, in his dreams, he walked through halls of black glass, where two voices called to him through smoke and flame, one soft, like the whisper of the sea, the other sharp, like steel drawn in anger. "The world turns again," they said. "The fire sleeps, but not forever." One night, as a blizzard swept the land, Joram felt a strange warmth in his chest. He rose from his bed and went to the door, drawn by something he could not name. The wind howled, the snow stung his face, but still he walked, through the woods, across the frozen stream, up the ridge that overlooked the valley. There, upon the snow, he saw it, a stone, half buried in ice. It was red as blood, veined with faint lines of white that glowed softly in the dark. When he touched it, fire flooded his veins. Visions burst behind his eyes, a woman of silver hair standing before a sea of flame, a man cloaked in shadow wielding a blade of smoke, a city burning, dragons screaming. He fell to his knees, gasping. When he opened his eyes, the storm had ceased. The snow around him had melted to steaming water, and in his palm, the stone pulsed like a living heart. He carried it back to his forge and set it upon the anvil. It glowed faintly even in darkness, warming the air around it. He could not look away. That night, the dreams came again, clearer now, louder. "Joram," said the woman's voice, "you carry what was once fire and flesh. The doom sleeps, but its breath awakens. You must guard it, or the world will burn anew." "Who are you?" he whispered into the dream. "We are the fire that fell, and the fire that must rise," came the answer. "Our time is done, but yours begins. When the red star falls again, the heart must find its way to dragon's blood, or the curse will break once more." He awoke drenched in sweat, his forge silent. The stone lay cold now, but he knew it was waiting. Word of the strange red glow in the north spread quickly. A Lycene trader, hearing the tale from shepherds, carried it across the narrow sea. In Old Town, Meisters scoffed, calling it wild fancy. But in the citadel's hidden chambers, where scrolls older than empires lay in dust, one gray-robed archmaester read and trembled. For in those ancient scrolls were tales of the Heartstone, the relic of Valyria, lost since the doom, said to hold the souls of a dragon lord and his bride. And beneath the words of warning was a single, chilling line: "When blood and fire wake once more, the shadow of the doom shall rise with them." The Archmeister sent ravens east and west, summoning scholars, sorcerers, and spies. In secret, he wrote to the Red Temple in Volantis, to the Shadowbinders of Ashai, even to the Citadel of Korth. The message was simple: the heart of the doom beats again. Joram Snow knew none of this. He only knew that the stone would not leave his thoughts. He began to hear whispers even while awake, the man's voice now, calm and steady, instructing him in words he did not understand. Steel remembers fire. Temper it with flame unseen. He obeyed without question. Each night, he worked by the light of the stone, forging blades unlike any other. The steel turned black as obsidian, yet when it caught light, faint red veins shimmered within it, like the Heartstone itself. He did not notice that his eyes had begun to change, that the dark within them deepened until a faint red spark glowed at the center. Winter came early that year. The villages along the Gift fell silent under snow. Travelers vanished upon the road. Joram stayed to his forge, listening to the whispers. And one night, as the wind howled against the shutters, there came a knock at his door. A woman stood there, tall, wrapped in furs, her hair pale as moonlight. Her eyes, cold and piercing, regarded him without fear. "You have something that belongs to me," she said. Her voice was the voice from his dreams. "The Heartstone," Joram whispered. She nodded once. "I was its keeper, long before you were born. But the world has need of it again. The fire beneath the sea stirs once more." "Who are you?" She stepped into the light, her gaze unwavering. "I am Velora Corel, and the doom you dream of is not finished." Joram stared, unable to breathe. He knew that name. From songs half remembered, from whispers in his sleep. "The Pale Viper?" he asked. Her lips curved faintly. "He walks beside me still, though you cannot see him." And as she spoke, the forge fire leapt high, and the Heartstone upon the anvil flared to life. Velora looked down upon it, her expression unreadable. "The age that fell has begun to rise again. Come, boy of the north, your blood runs hot with forgotten flame. You must see what waits beyond the sea." The stone pulsed once, as if in answer, and when she turned toward the door, the shadow of a dragon swept across the snow. The old world was stirring. The doom, it seemed, had only slept. Joram Snow did not speak as he followed the woman into the storm. Snow and ash fell together that night, and though the wind howled like wolves, her footsteps left no mark upon the drifts. The heartstone pulsed faintly in Joram's hand, its warmth seeping into his skin, guiding him onward. Beyond the village, the land fell away into a frozen moor. The wind tore at his cloak, yet the woman strode ahead untouched by cold or storm. Her silver hair shone against the dark, a faint light to follow. When they reached the edge of the world, where the land gave way to the frozen sea, she stopped. The ice stretched to the horizon, unbroken and pale as bone. "Here," Valora said softly, her breath a shimmer of mist. "Beneath this ice lies what was lost, what the Doom once tried to claim." Joram looked out upon the frozen expanse. "The sea? The sea is the skin of the world," she replied, "and beneath it lies the wound that never healed." He frowned. "The Doom of Valyria?" Her gaze met his, calm and sorrowful. "Aye, the fire still burns below, though the world forgets. It whispers to the blood of dragons, to those who carry its memory. That is why you dreamed, why the Heartstone found you." Joram's pulse quickened. "Then what do you want from me?" She regarded him for a long time before answering. "You are not merely foundling and forge boy. There is fire in you, though your veins bear snow. The line of the freehold runs thin, but endures, even in this frozen land." "I am no Valyrian," he said. Valora's lips curved faintly. "Then why do you dream of dragons?" Before he could answer, the ice beneath them groaned. A red light pulsed deep below, faint but growing stronger, as though something vast stirred beneath the frozen crust. Violora lifted her hand, and the Heartstone rose from Joram's grasp, floating between them. "It calls to us," she said. "To me, to you, to every spark of fire that still lives in the world. The breath of the deep stirs again, and if we do not bind it, it will rise and devour everything." The light beneath the ice flared, and Joram stumbled back as a wave of heat rushed upward. The ice hissed, melting in spirals around them. Steam rose into the night air. "What is it?" he gasped. "The memory of what was," she said, "and the promise of what will be. Come, there is no time." She stepped forward, onto the cracking ice, and the Heartstone's glow deepened to crimson. The world tilted. Joram felt the ground shift beneath him, and then he was falling through fire and water, through visions of ruin and birth. He saw cities burning, dragons screaming, towers collapsing into flame. He saw a man in shadow and a woman of light, their hands clasped as the world fell around them. And then he saw himself, standing upon the shore of a sea that burned, the Heartstone in his chest. When the visions faded, he found himself standing in a vast cavern, the walls of which glowed red and gold. Lava flowed in slow rivers through the stone, and high above, a hole in the roof revealed the faint shimmer of the frozen sea. "This is the breath of the deep," Valora said beside him, "the oldest fire in the world." The heat was unbearable. Joram's breath came short, and sweat streamed down his face. "You said we must bind it. How?" "The same way I once bound the Doom, by will and blood. But this time, I cannot do it alone." She turned to him, her eyes luminous. "You carry my fire within you. A shard of my soul lingers in the stone you touched. When you took it, our fates entwined. You are my vessel now, as I once was the world's." Joram shook his head. "I am no sorcerer. I don't know your ways." "Then listen." She placed her hand over his heart, and the warmth spread through him, fierce and steady. "You do not need spells. Fire knows fire. It answers to blood and will. Together, we can still the doom again. But if we fail, it will rise and consume all of Westeros." He nodded, though fear gripped him. "Tell me what to do." She stepped into the light, her arms raised, the heartstone hovering between her palms. "When I speak the word, give yourself to the flame. Do not fight it. Do not fear it. Let it pass through you, and I will guide it." The ground trembled, and a deep roar filled the air. The lava churned, rising like a tide. The red light filled the cavern until the air itself seemed to burn. "Now!" Valora cried. Joram stepped forward, the heat scalding his flesh. He felt his heart hammering, the blood roaring in his ears. He thrust his hands toward the fire, and in that instant, pain and light consumed him. He was no longer flesh, but flame. He saw Valora's face before him, calm and radiant, her eyes filled with both sorrow and pride. "Hold fast," she shouted. The breath of the deep roared, a living storm of molten fury. It surged toward them, a wave of light and destruction. Together, they reached out, the heartstone blazing between their hands. The fire struck and was caught. The cavern shook as the flames met resistance for the first time in centuries. Joram screamed, feeling his strength tear away, drawn into the burning. His skin cracked, his bones turned to light, but still he held. Valora's voice rose in chant, ancient and pure. Fire to fire, blood to blood, heart to heart. The flames coiled, twisted, and began to fold inward. The cavern roared like the birth of a world. And then all was still. Joram collapsed, smoke rising from his skin. The fire had gone silent. The rivers of molten stone cooled, solidifying into glass. Valora knelt beside him, her face pale. "You did it," she whispered. He opened his eyes, weak but alive. "Is it done?" "For now," she said, "but the fire is never gone. It only sleeps." He managed a faint smile. "Then I'll keep watch." Her hand brushed his hair, light as ash. "You may yet do more than that, boy of the north." As the cavern cooled, she began to fade, her form turning to mist and light. "The world will remember your name," she said. "When dragons rise again, so too shall the fire you carry." And with that, she was gone. Joram sat alone in the darkness, the heartstone cold against his chest, but still pulsing faintly, steady as breath. Above, far beyond the ice, dawn broke over the northern sky. The red star still burned, but now its light was softer, as though appeased. He looked toward it, weary but unafraid. "Let the fire sleep then," he murmured. "But if it wakes, I'll be ready." And somewhere, deep beneath the frozen world, the breath of the deep stirred once more, content, for now, to dream. The snows fell heavier that winter, burying the north in silence. The villagers whispered that the gods had gone quiet, that the storms themselves were the breath of some ancient power stirring beneath the ice. Joram Snow, once the blacksmith's apprentice, was now a man apart. None saw him often, and when they did, they spoke of the fire that flickered faintly behind his eyes, as though he carried an unseen forge within him. He lived alone upon the ridge above the valley, where his forge still burned, though no wood or coal was ever seen upon it. Some nights the mountain itself glowed red, and travelers passing beneath crossed themselves, muttering prayers to the old gods and the new. Joram did not pray. He listened. For in the long hours between dusk and dawn, when the world lay frozen and still, he heard her voice. Sometimes it came from the fire, sometimes from the wind that whispered through the cracks of the stone. "The fire sleeps, but it dreams," Valora would say. And dreams have power, even in the dark. He would ask her questions about the world before, about the doom, about the dragons that once ruled the skies, but she answered little. "Those days are gone," she said once. "The world belongs to others now, yet the seed of fire remains, waiting for those who will bear it anew." He thought of her often, of the pale light of her eyes, of the sorrow that had lingered in her every word. He wondered if she still lingered somewhere between the world of men and the world of flame. Years passed. The snows melted and returned again. Small folk began to speak of strange omens, the return of red stars, of lights dancing above the sea, of dreams that burned their sleepers from within. Ravens carried tales south, and meisters wrote of a new fire awakening in the north, though they dismissed it as peasant superstition. Yet one night, as Joram worked the forge, the heartstone pulsed again. It had been dark for many winters, yet now it beat with a steady glow, as though something beneath the earth had drawn breath once more. He felt it before he saw it, the tremor that ran through the floor, the faint, distant roar echoing up from the depths of the world. He looked northward, toward the wall. The sky above it blazed crimson, and within the light, wings moved. For a heartbeat, he could not breathe. The shape was vast, gliding across the stars, a dragon or the ghost of one. Its roar shook the night. The heartstone flared, and Valora's voice came again, clearer than ever. "It wakes." Joram stumbled back from the forge, the heat rising around him. The flame leapt higher, swirling into a spiral that reached toward the roof. Within it, a shadow took shape, a woman's form, pale and shining. "Valora," he breathed. She looked upon him, her face sorrowful, yet resolute. "The world's fire stirs again. The balance we bound begins to break. The breath of the deep cannot sleep forever." He felt the truth of her words in his bones. "Then what must I do?" "The doom was never ended, only delayed," she said. "The blood of dragons called it once, and it will call again. There are those now across the sea who play with that same flame, blind to its hunger. If it wakes before its time, the world will burn once more." He stared into the light. "You mean Valyria?" "The ashes of it," she said. "In the east, in hidden halls, they have found fragments of what was lost, spells, stones, secrets that should never have endured, and at their heart burns a spark that bears your name." "My name?" "You carry what remains of the fire's will," she said. "When the old Valyrians fell, it sought a new vessel. It found you. You are its living bond, the one who may renew or end the doom forever." He shook his head. "I am no dragon lord. I am no hero." Her gaze did not soften. "Neither was I, when I stood against it. But fire does not choose the worthy. It chooses the willing." The heartstone pulsed again, brighter, faster. He felt its rhythm within his own chest. "Then I will go," he said. "Tell me where." She lifted her hand, and the fire within the forge twisted into a vision. He saw a chain of islands beneath a storm-tossed sea, the stepstones once more. Upon the largest stood a black tower, its windows glowing red. "There," Valora said. "They call it Dragon's Mirror now. Men from Essos gather there, seeking to wake the old power. They do not understand that to touch it is to die. You must go, Joram Snow. You must end what they begin." The light wavered, and for a moment her face seemed to fade. "The world has forgotten Valyria's lesson. You are its memory now." The flame vanished, leaving only the dull glow of the forge. He left before dawn, taking only his cloak and a blade forged of blackened steel, the first and last he had made with the Heartstone's fire. The road south was long and the winter wind unkind, yet he did not falter. The voice of the flame guided him, faint but steady. He crossed the white knife, passed through Winterfell's shadows, and followed the king's road to the sea. In White Harbor, he found a ship, an old trader bound for the narrow sea. Its captain, a squat man from Pentos, asked no questions so long as Joram paid in silver. The voyage was harsh. Storms chased them through the bight, and once, in the dead of night, the sea burned red beneath the waves. The crew crossed themselves and muttered of omens, but Joram stood at the prow, staring into the fire-lit water. He thought he saw shapes moving there, faces he almost remembered. When at last they reached the stepstones, the captain refused to land. "Those islands are cursed," he said. "Men vanish there, and ships burn without flame." Joram went alone, rowing a small boat toward the black cliffs. The air smelled of ash. Lightning split the clouds, revealing the tower from his vision, tall, narrow, and cruel, its stones slick with the sea's salt. He climbed the path in silence, the wind tearing at his cloak. When he reached the gates, he found them unbarred. Within, torches burned with blue fire, and the walls were carved with Valyrian glyphs that shimmered faintly in the gloom. He moved through empty halls until he reached the chamber at the tower's heart. There, a great brazier burned, not with flame, but with molten stone, as though the earth itself had been torn open. Around it stood 7 figures in robes of crimson and black, their faces hidden by masks of gold. One turned as he entered. "Ah," the figure said, voice smooth and cultured. "The last spark comes to us of its own will." Joram's hand went to his blade. "Who are you?" "Disciples of the flame," the man said. "Heirs of the freehold. You carry what belongs to us." The heartstone beneath Joram's cloak began to glow, answering their fire. He drew the sword. "Then come and take it." The chamber trembled as fire flared in their hands. The man laughed softly. "So the blood remembers after all. Good. Let the doom begin anew." And as the walls filled with light, Joram Snow stepped forward into the fire. The fire that filled the tower was not the fire of a forge or hearth, but the wrath of the world itself. It roared up from the molten pit in the floor, curling toward the vaulted ceiling in great tongues of gold and crimson. The masked figures stood unmoved, their arms outstretched, chanting in the flowing, terrible speech of old Valyria. Joram Snow stood before them, his blackened blade gleaming red in the shifting light. The heat scorched his skin, yet he felt no pain, only the pulse of the heartstone beneath his tunic, beating in rhythm with the fire that raged around him. "Do you know what you carry, boy?" the leader asked. His mask was wrought in the shape of a dragon's face, its eyes glittering with rubies. "That stone is no relic. It is the last breath of the doom, the spirit of the flame that ended empires. Give it to us, and we will grant you life everlasting." Joram took a step forward. "You would wake the same fire that devoured your ancestors. Have you learned nothing from their folly?" "Folly?" The man laughed, a hollow sound. "The doom was not punishment. It was transcendence. The weak burned, but the strong were made immortal. You stand before their inheritors." He spread his arms, and from the brazier rose a shape, a vast shadow of wings and teeth, formed of molten air. It coiled above them, its eyes glowing like suns. The disciples fell to their knees, voices raised in worship. Joram did not move. The heartstone burned against his chest, and with each beat, he felt Vylora's presence stir within him. "Do not falter," her voice whispered. "This is the fire that must be bound, or all will end as before." He lifted his sword. Then let us see whose fire endures." The leader's smile vanished. So be it. The air erupted in flame. Joram leapt forward, his blade cutting through the first disciple in a single stroke. The man screamed, and his body burst into cinders, the ash scattering like sparks. The others turned, their hands blazing with light. Bolts of fire streaked toward him, searing the air, but he moved like a shadow between them, his blade singing. Each strike he landed shattered the illusions of immortality the disciples had built around themselves. Each blow burned brighter than the last. But for every one he struck down, the fire grew wilder. It poured from the pit in the floor, licking at the walls, devouring the ancient glyphs carved into the stone. The leader watched with eyes like molten gold. "You cannot stop it," he said. "You are one of us. The fire has chosen you, whether you will it or not." Joram's breath came ragged. "The fire chooses no master." He raised the heartstone in his hand. It blazed with crimson light, and the dragon-shaped shadow above the brazier shuddered, roaring. The masked man's composure faltered for the first time. "What have you done? I've set it free." The heartstone flared. Light engulfed the chamber, swallowing flame, stone, and flesh alike. The air trembled as the molten pit exploded, a fountain of fire that reached the heavens. When Joram awoke, he lay upon a shore of black sand. The sea was red, and the sky glowed like embers. The tower of Dragon's Mirror was gone. Only molten ruin remained, still hissing as the tide claimed it. He sat up, the heartstone still clutched in his hand. It no longer glowed. It was dark now, heavy and still, as if it had spent the last of its power. "You did it," came a voice behind him. He turned. Vailora stood there, her feet bare upon the hot sand, her silver hair unmarked by the wind. She seemed both near and distant, her form wavering like a reflection in water. "Did I?" he asked. "Or did I only wake it again?" "The fire is never truly gone," she said, "but you have turned it from the path they sought. You gave it life, not death." He looked toward the smoking horizon. "Then why does the world still burn?" Her gaze followed his. "Because men will always seek the fire. They crave its warmth even as it consumes them. The doom will never die while greed and pride live." He closed his eyes. Then what good was any of this? Vailora knelt beside him. It was not to end the fire, but to teach it mercy. The breath of the deep is bound again, but this time to a heart that remembers pain. He opened his hand. The heartstone lay there, dull and cracked. "Mine." She nodded. "Yours. So long as you live, the fire will sleep. But should it ever fall into the hands of those who hunger for its power, the doom will rise anew." He stared at her, the waves hissing at their feet. "Then I must guard it." "You must hide it," she said. "The world is not ready for another fire-born soul. Take it north, to the cold that fire fears. There, in the land of ice, let it rest." She rose, her form fading in the rising light. "My time here is done. I am only the echo of what was." "Will I see you again?" he asked. Her smile was sad and small. "In every flame that warms a heart without burning it, that is where I will be." The wind swept through her, scattering her like ashes. Joram traveled north once more. He crossed the narrow sea by ship, though the sailors avoided his eyes, whispering that he carried the storm with him. The sky burned red each dusk, as though the sea itself remembered the fire he had unleashed. When at last he reached the shores of the north, he did not rest. He climbed into the frost fangs, where no man lived, where even the wildlings feared to wander. At the highest peak, he found a cavern cut into the ice. There, he built no fire. He took the hearthstone, now black as obsidian, and buried it deep within the frozen wall. "Sleep," he said, his breath misting in the cold. "Sleep and forget." He sealed the entrance with stone and snow. Then he turned away and walked down into the blizzard, never to be seen again. Years turned to centuries. The cave remained hidden, untouched by sun or flame. The hearthstone lay quiet beneath its shroud of ice, its faint glow unseen. Yet when storms howled across the north and the red star burned once more in the heavens, the ice would crack and a pulse would echo deep below, steady, slow, patient. And some who walked the wall on those cold nights swore they saw a figure moving through the storm, a man with eyes like embers, guarding something the world must never find. For in every age, fire waits for its name to be called again. The snows swallowed the ages. Kingdoms rose, fought, and vanished. Kings' names turned to dust on the tongues of their grandchildren. In the north, the heart of winter slept as it always had, cold and ancient, unmoved by the vanity of men. Yet deep within that frozen land, beneath stone and ice, something stirred when the wind howled from the east. The ice cracked one night. It began as a whisper, a tremor so small it might have been the sigh of the mountain itself. But then came the pulse, faint but sure, echoing in the buried cavern. The hearthstone, long entombed, beat once, a slow throb of red beneath layers of frost. It was answered. Far away, across the narrow sea, a dragon cried out. It was not the roar of rage or hunger, but something older, a memory of kinship long forgotten. The sound echoed over the smoking ruins of Valyria and was carried on the winds to the lands of men. Thus, the world turned again. In King's Landing, beneath the vaults of the great sept, a red priestess from the east knelt before her god's fire. The flames shifted as she prayed, forming shapes that no other could see, wings of shadow, a heart burning in darkness, and a figure walking alone through snow. She rose slowly, her eyes gleaming with firelight. "The north," she whispered. "The flame sleeps in the north." Her name was Miriel of Ashai, and though the lords of Westeros called her witch and heretic, she had the favor of one who listened to whispers older than kings. She had seen the return of dragons, the rebirth of fire in the blood of men. Yet her visions showed something beyond even that, a power that could unmake both ice and flame. She set her journey north before dawn. The road was long, winding through the riverlands scarred by war, past the neck where the marshes swallowed men whole, and up into the wild expanse beyond Winterfell. Wherever she went, the air grew colder. The common folk who saw her muttered of omens, the red woman whose fire would not die, even in snow. At last, she came to a ruined village near the Shadow Tower, where the wind never ceased its wailing. There she found an old hunter, half blind, warming himself beside a dying fire. "You seek the place of silence," he told her when she asked about the northern peaks. "But no one who goes that way returns. The mountain keeps what it takes." She smiled faintly. "Then I will ask it to give back what it holds." The hunter crossed himself, muttering, "There's something up there, The air hums when the storms come. Some nights I've seen a red glow through the snow, like blood caught in ice." "That will be enough," she said. The climb took her 3 days. The blizzard rose on the second night, and the wind flayed her cloak to ribbons, but she pressed on. At last, when her strength began to fail, she saw it, a narrow cleft in the mountain wall, rimmed with frost. Inside, the air was still, heavy and bitterly cold. The cavern stretched deep, its walls glimmering faintly with veins of trapped fire, frozen mid-flow like molten rivers turned to glass. And at its heart, buried beneath centuries of ice, she saw it. A stone as dark as night, shot through with faint crimson lines that pulsed in time with her heartbeat. The Heartstone. She knelt before it, breath trembling in the cold. "So it is true," she murmured. "The fire that was bound, the doom that sleeps." The wind whispered behind her, and for a moment she thought she heard a voice. "Leave it." She turned sharply. The cavern was empty. "You are not forgotten," she said aloud, her voice echoing. "Your name is written in fire. The world burns again, and your time has come." The pulse quickened. The ice began to crack. "Rise," she whispered. "Wake, child of flame. The world has need of you once more." The light within the stone flared. The ice burst apart, shards scattering like glass. Muriel shielded her face as a wave of heat struck her. The stone throbbed, alive now, its glow bright enough to turn the cavern red. And then, silence. The fire dimmed, settling into a steady rhythm. But Muriel felt it in her bones. Something vast had shifted. Somewhere deep below, in the veins of the world, the breath of the deep had stirred again. That night, as she camped near the mountain's base, she dreamed. She stood in a land of ash and flame where dragons circled through smoke-filled skies. A man waited before her, a tall man in a dark cloak, his eyes glinting like embers. "Who are you?" she asked. "Once," he said, "I was called Joram Snow." She felt her heart quicken. "You are the guardian, the one who bound the fire." "Aye," he said, "and you are the one who woke it." He stepped closer, his expression unreadable. "Do you know what you have done?" "I have answered destiny," she said proudly. "The fire will cleanse this world, as it did before. The darkness rises in the north. The others walk again." "Fire is the only answer." His eyes flashed. "Fire devours as darkness does. It knows no mercy. I buried the heart so the world might live. You would undo that?" "The world you saved is dying," she replied. "The cold returns. You cannot stop it." Joram looked past her, to the horizon where flame met snow. Then the world must choose again. When she woke, the fire was out. By morning, the Heartstone was gone from its place in the cavern. The hunter who found her weeks later spoke of a storm that had torn through the peaks, a storm that burned instead of froze. He swore the mountain itself had bled red light for 3 days. Muriel never reached the wall. Her ship to Eastwatch vanished into the shivering sea, and her name passed into rumor and song. But the stories did not end. Travelers in the north spoke of strange fire dancing beneath the aurora, of voices whispering from the frozen cliffs. One even claimed to have seen a man walking the snows near Hardhome, his hair white as frost, his eyes the color of burning coals. He said the man looked east, as if listening for something far away. And when the wind howled through the mountains, some swore they heard it whisper a name long forgotten by the world of men, Vialora. The fire slept again, but the heartbeat of the world had quickened. And somewhere beyond the sea, where dragons flew once more, the red star blazed anew in the heavens, bright, watchful, and patient. Spring had not yet come to the north when the Heartstone woke for the second time. It was no sudden blaze, no roar of fire and ruin as before. It began as a quiet hum, a soft pulse buried deep within the mountain, as if the frozen earth itself had begun to dream again. Beneath the weight of centuries, the red veins in the stone flickered to life. The ice that had bound it began to melt, not swiftly, but with patient persistence, a slow weeping of frost that traced its way down to the caverns below. The air filled with whispers, faint as sighs, until the mountain itself seemed to breathe. And somewhere, far to the south, a dragon turned its head toward the cold wind and roared. In the citadel of Old Town, a maester named Taran Maller sat alone in the library's oldest vault. He was a thin, pale man whose chain hung heavy with links of iron and black steel, marks of his study in forbidden crafts. For weeks he had read the raven's tidings from the north. Strange lights, crimson storms, and the vanishing of the Red Woman of Ashai. He dipped his quill and wrote in the margin of an ancient Valyrian scroll. The flame has changed hands. His candle sputtered. For a moment he thought it was the wind. Then he heard the faintest murmur, words so old they could not have been spoken by any living tongue. The air shimmered, and upon his desk, where there had been only parchment, a thin trail of ash formed the shape of a heart. Taran stared. The ash pulsed once, faintly. He leaned closer, whispering, "So it begins again." He knew the stories of the Pale Viper, of Valora, of the doom that had swallowed Valyria whole. He had spent his life studying what the Citadel had forbidden, and now, for the first time, he felt their truth burning against his skin. He gathered his scrolls and maps, locked his chamber, and left the Citadel that same night. The road north was long and perilous. Pirates plagued the narrow sea, and the storm season had begun early. Yet Maester Taran pressed on, taking ship after ship, crossing from White Harbor into the frozen lands beyond. Each night he dreamed of the same vision, a red heart beating beneath glass, a man walking across the snow, and a woman's voice whispering, "The fire must not fall again." By the time he reached the base of the Frostfangs, his hair had turned white and his skin weathered like parchment. But he felt it still, the pull, the ancient calling of something vast and waiting. The villagers had seen things, as they always did. One swore that shadows moved through the blizzard, shapes of men whose eyes glowed red. Another told him that fire had been seen atop the mountain during the last full moon. He climbed regardless. The path was narrow, carved by wind and time, winding between black cliffs slick with frost. His breath steamed in the air, his limbs numb beneath the cold. He climbed until the clouds swallowed him, until there was no sky nor sun, only endless white. And then he found it, the cave that had been a whisper in every scroll he had read. The entrance yawned before him like the mouth of a god. Inside, the ice glowed faintly red, the light shifting as though the stone beneath it were alive. He stepped forward, and his lantern flickered, struggling against the unnatural warmth that seeped from the walls. When he reached the heart of the cavern, he fell to his knees. There it was, the Heartstone, black and red, humming with slow life. The air around it shimmered with heat, though no fire burned. Its glow pulsed like breath. Taran reached out, trembling. "So this is where it sleeps," he whispered. "The curse, the gift, the wound of the world." As his fingers brushed the surface, pain seared through him. His mind flooded with visions, Valyria burning, the Pale Viper's dagger flashing, Valora's face turned to flame, the earth cracking, dragons screaming. He saw Joram Snow's hands burying the stone beneath the ice. He saw the Red Priestess calling it back from death. He cried out, but the stone did not release him. A voice spoke, not aloud, but inside his skull. "You seek to master what masters all. Are you stronger than fire, Maester?" Taran fell back, gasping. "I seek only to understand," he rasped. understanding his hunger by another name, the voice said. He looked up, and from the red glow, a figure began to form, a man's shape, tall and cloaked, his face shadowed. The eyes burned like coals. "I know you," Taryn whispered. "Joram's snow." The figure inclined its head. "Once, you guard this place. I guard the world from what sleeps within it." Taryn swallowed. "And yet you are bound to it." Joram's eyes flared brighter. "Because I must be. Fire is not evil, master, nor good. It simply is. But when men seek to use it, they wake the doom anew." Taryn steadied himself. "I came to bind it, not to use it." A second voice answered, a woman's voice soft as rain, echoing from the ice. "To bind it is to hold it. To hold it is to claim it. The heart does not serve. It remembers." From the red light rose another figure, pale and luminous. Vailora. She looked between the two men, her expression both weary and kind. "The world turns again," she said. "It always does. Fire sleeps, men wake it. The same song, sung anew." Taryn bowed his head. "Then teach me. Let me be your hand. Let me keep it safe." Valora's gaze pierced him. "Would you burn for it?" "Yes." "Would you burn the world to keep it from burning itself?" He hesitated. "That," she said softly, "is why no man should bear the fire long." She turned to Joram. "It wakes, as we knew it would. The dragons rise again in the east. The red star burns brighter. The world will need the flame once more, but not yet." Joram's expression hardened. "Then what do we do?" "The same as before," she said. "We sleep." The Meister's eyes widened. "No, you cannot. If it sleeps again, it will rise worse than before." Valora smiled sadly. "All things rise worse than before. That is the curse of the living. But you may keep watch." Before he could protest, the red light burst outward, filling the cavern. Taryn screamed as it passed through him. When the glow faded, the Heartstone was dark once more, sealed in its tomb of ice. The figures were gone. Only the Meister remained, kneeling before the frozen relic, his hair white, his eyes faintly burning with red light. When the villagers found him months later, he was half buried in snow, staring northward. He said no word to them, only carried a lantern that never went out, its flame blood red. He built a small shelter near the mountain's base, where he lived alone until his dying days. Some called him mad, others called him the Watcher of the Fire. And on certain nights, when the wind blew from the east and the sky blazed with crimson light, travelers swore they saw him still, a pale figure walking the ridge, holding his lantern high, guarding the fire that slept beneath the ice. For the heart of the world beats on, slow and patient, waiting for the day it will wake again. In the long silence that followed, the Watcher's fire became legend. Generations passed, and his name faded into whispers. The North forgot the man who had walked the frozen ridge with his red lantern, though travelers still spoke, in hushed voices, of a strange light that flickered beneath the mountains when the storms came. They said it was the breath of the earth, the last echo of Valeria's curse. But stories have long lives, and some truths are patient. When the Targaryens first came from Dragonstone to claim the Seven Kingdoms, their dragons screamed at the scent of northern wind. None could say why. When they soared above the wall, their wings faltered, and they turned southward with fury and fear. Aegon himself forbade his dragons to fly beyond the wall. "The fire sleeps there," he said, though none knew what he meant. Years turned to centuries, and still the North endured, cold and unyielding. Kings knelt, dragons died, and the realm forgot its own beginnings. But the fire, buried deep beneath frost and time, did not die. It waited, dreaming in silence, while men wove new crowns and new wars above it. Then came the age of ruin, the long winter when the wall wept ice and the dead walked. In that age, there was a ranger of the Night's Watch named Saren Pike, a quiet man of the western hills who spoke little but saw much. His brothers said he had the North's own eyes, pale and sharp as the moon. He kept to the haunted forests, ranging farther north than any man dared. One night, under a sky veiled in crimson aurora, Saren saw a light upon the mountains, a deep red pulse that beat like a heart through the storm. The other rangers would not go near, saying the spirits of the old kings guarded that place, but Saren's dreams were filled with the same glow. It called to him. He set out alone at dawn, following the ghost of the Watcher's trail up through the frost fangs. The snow came heavy, the wind colder than iron, but the light never faded. At last he found the mouth of the cavern. The ice above it glimmered faintly, as though a fire burned behind glass. Inside, the air was warm. He walked in silence until he reached the frozen heart of the world. And there it was, the stone, black and red, pulsing softly within its crystal tomb. Saren knelt. The warmth spread through his body, and the whisper came, soft, curious, alive. "You carry steel, but your heart burns. Why have you come?" He dropped his torch. The flame sputtered, but the red light from the heartstone filled the cavern, and within it stood two shapes. One man, one woman, made of light and smoke. The woman's eyes were pale as the dawn. The man's burned like embers. "I dreamed of this place," Saren said. "The wall falls. The dead walk. I thought perhaps fire could stop them." Valora stepped closer, her voice like wind through glass. "The fire saves nothing. It only chooses what must be lost. The dead don't choose," he said. "They take." Joram's shadow regarded him in silence. "You would wake the heart again?" "If that's what it takes to drive them back." The cavern shook. The heartstone's glow deepened. Valora looked at him sadly. Every age finds its fool who believes he can save the world. But the world is not meant to be saved, only endured. "Then why guard it?" Saren asked, his voice breaking. "Why keep it buried, if not for this?" She did not answer. Joram's gaze met hers. "Perhaps the time has come." Valora turned toward the stone. "If we wake it again, it will not sleep. The fire will burn through ice and bone alike. There will be no peace. Peace is for the dead," Joram said quietly, "and the dead already walk." For a moment, they seemed to waver. Ancient wills caught between mercy and doom. Then, together, they laid their ghostly hands upon the heartstone. The ice cracked, the cavern filled with a sound like thunder underwater. Saren fell to his knees, blinded by light. When his sight returned, the stone had changed. It no longer pulsed red but white-hot, glowing with all the fury of the sun. The two figures were gone. In their place stood a blade. It was long and narrow, its surface black as night, its edge burning faintly red. The air around it shimmered with heat. Saren reached out and grasped the hilt. The moment he touched it, fire surged through him, pain and strength and memory all at once. He saw Valyria fall, saw dragons die, saw a woman's tear turn to flame. He heard 1,000 voices whisper one name, Valora. The fire did not consume him. It obeyed. When Saren returned to Castle Black, the storms had stilled. His brothers saw the sword he carried and called it cursed, for no snow could touch its blade. He said little of where it came from, only that it would not rest until the darkness was ended. They laughed as men do when fear is near. Yet when the cold winds brought the white shadows down from the haunted forest, it was Saren Pike who met them first. He stood upon the wall as they came, eyes burning with the same red light as the sword in his hand. The brothers who watched from the gate said he did not fight like a man, but like the storm itself. His blade burned without fuel, cutting through ice and shadow alike until the dead fled before him. When the night ended, the field below the wall was black with ash and bone. But Saren was gone. Only the sword remained, plunged deep into the frozen earth, still burning, though no man dared touch it. Many winters later, when the wall itself fell and the last of the night's watch lay scattered, wildlings spoke of a glow that lingered in the ruins. A blade buried in ice, burning with a red light that never dimmed. The maesters would say it was nonsense, a trick of reflection, a remnant of wildfire lost in the cold. Yet travelers who went near the Frostfangs returned, changed, quiet, hollow-eyed, speaking of a voice that whispered from the snow. The fire sleeps, but not forever. And in the far south, across deserts and seas, a young girl with silver hair dreamed of a blade buried in ice and a heart that beat beneath mountains. When she woke, her dragons screamed toward the north. For the age was turning once more, and the world's oldest fire stirred beneath its shroud of frost, waiting for one last keeper to call its name. The snows were melting when she came to the Frostfangs. The rivers ran swift and red with clay, and the mountains groaned with the weight of spring. Crows wheeled high above her, black flecks against the pale sky. Her name was Denora Targaryen, daughter of no king, though the blood of dragons ran in her veins. Few remembered her lineage. Fewer still believed her claim. But she had dreamed of fire since her cradle, dreamed of wings beating in darkness, and of a sword burning in the heart of ice. When she was a child in exile, her nurse had told her tales of the doom, that great and fiery end that had swallowed Valyria whole. Denora would listen, eyes wide, while the old woman whispered of the pale viper and the lady of the flame, of a curse bound by love, and of a heart that still beat beneath the northern frost. She had not forgotten. Now she rode north under a sky veiled with crimson light. The wind smelled of snow and salt. Behind her came a small company of sellswords, their faces hidden by furs and their eyes wary. They did not question her purpose. Her coin was gold, her gaze commanding. But when they saw the red gleam that danced sometimes in her eyes, they muttered prayers to the Seven. On the second night, a storm rose. The company made camp beside a frozen lake, and Denora stood apart, staring into the white waste ahead. The mountains loomed like giants asleep. Somewhere among them, she knew, lay the sword from her dreams, the fire that had slept since the dawn of ages. When she closed her eyes, she heard it again. The heartbeat. Slow, steady, patient. "Come," it whispered. "The world grows cold again. The fire must wake." By morning, the storm had passed. The path ahead was narrow, choked with fallen stone and snow. Her companions grumbled, but she led them upward, her pale hair streaming behind her like a banner. They reached the ridge by dusk. Below them, the world stretched vast and white, the desolation beyond the wall. Above them, the sky shimmered red and green, and in its light, the mountains burned with ghostly fire. Then, one of the men cried out. At the base of the highest peak, half buried in ice, something glowed, a faint red spark pulsing in rhythm with the wind. Denora's breath caught. She spurred her horse forward. The climb was long and cruel. The air thinned until each breath felt like knives. The mercenaries cursed, some turning back, but she pressed on. The closer she came, the stronger the warmth became, until the snow hissed beneath her feet. When at last she reached the summit, she found it, a cavern mouth rimed with frost. The red glow spilled from within, painting the snow like blood. Her guards hesitated. "My lady," one said, "no man should go in there. It's wrong." Denora dismounted. "Then I go alone." She drew her sword, a slender Valyrian steel blade, heirloom of her forgotten house, and entered the dark. The air inside was alive. It shimmered with heat, and the walls of ice gleamed like mirrors. Deeper she went, the red light growing stronger, until she reached the cavern's heart. There it was, the sword, half buried in the ice. Its hilt was black, its edge faintly red, as if forged from sunset. Around it, the air shimmered like a mirage. Denora stepped closer, trembling. Her breath came fast. The stories were true. This was no forge's work. It was the living fire of Valyria, sleeping beneath the world. She knelt before it and touched the hilt. The world vanished. She stood in a field of flame. Above her, dragons wheeled, their cries like thunder. The sky burned gold and red, and before her stood a woman cloaked in light, her silver hair flowing as though stirred by unseen wind. "Who are you?" Denora asked. The woman smiled faintly. "Once, they called me Vealora, and you are the blood of my blood, though many ages divide us." Denora's heart pounded. You forged this fire." "I bound it," Vealora said, "to save a world that wished to destroy itself. I gave it to the north, to sleep beneath the ice, that fire and frost might hold each other in balance." "Then why call me here?" Vealora's gaze was sorrowful. "Because balance breaks. The wall has fallen. The dead rise. The fire must wake again, or all will fall to shadow." Denora looked up at the burning sky. "Then I'll free it." The spirit's eyes narrowed. "And what will you do with such power? Child of dragons? Rule? Burn?" "I'll live," Denora said fiercely, "and I'll make the world live too." Vealora's smile was sad. "You speak as I once did." She touched Denora's cheek, her hand warm as sunlight. "Then take it, but remember, the fire serves none who do not serve it in turn." The light faded. Denora awoke in the cavern, her hand still on the sword. The ice around it had melted, leaving only steam. She drew it from the stone. The air filled with heat and sound, the crackle of flame, the sigh of awakening. The blade burned without consuming, red and gold, its edge singing in her grasp. Behind her, the mercenaries cried out, shielding their faces from the glare. "Gods be good," one whispered. "What have you done?" Denora turned. Her eyes glowed like coals. "I have done what was foretold." She raised the sword. Its light filled the cavern, brighter than any sun. The fire sleeps no more. In the days that followed, the snows melted along the frost fangs. The rivers swelled with steam, and the ice of the wall cracked from end to end. South of the gift, shepherds saw a red dawn spread across the horizon, and the maesters of the citadel marked the coming of a new star, a comet burning crimson, as if the heavens themselves bled. Denora rode south through the thawing wilds, the burning sword strapped across her back. Where she passed, frost turned to mist. Villages whispered of the Lady of Flame, reborn to cleanse the world of death. And in her dreams, Vealora's voice followed her still. "You have woken it, child. Now learn whether you can bear it." Far below, in the buried depths where no light had reached for centuries, two shadows stirred. The shapes of a man and a woman, bound by fire and by fate, looked upward through the ice. "She has our gift," the man said. "And our curse," replied the woman. "Do you think she will save them?" The woman's smile was faint and weary. If she remembers what fire is for. The heartstone pulsed once, as if in answer. Then the mountain grew still again. Above, Daenora Targaryen rode on beneath the red star's light, her sword blazing at her side toward a world waiting to be burned, or reborn, and so ended the long sleep of the fire. Thus began the last song of the Dune.